The U.S. launched a military strike on Iran, and President Trump is framing it in moral terms. Phil, Katelyn, and Katelyn Beaty discuss the administration's shifting justifications for war and why Christians should be cautious of language that makes it easier to dehumanize our enemies. Then they turn to the mass shooting in Austin and the predictable scramble again to turn tragedy into political leverage. Then, Katelyn interviews journalist Carrie McKean about why distrust in public health and debates over immigration are often far more complicated than our partisan categories allow. Also this week, don't take selfies with snow leopards. Well, Sky's out of town this week, but if he were here, he would want you to know that you only have 2 more days to take advantage of a 1-week free trial of HOLYPOST Plus. This week, we have a bonus interview with Carrie McKean, where she talks about how returning to West Texas and living through the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the limits of her own stereotypes and challenged her to hold her opinions more loosely. It's a great interview. You're going to want to check it out along with all of the other fantastic content we have on HOLYPOST Plus. Go to holypost.com/plus to take advantage of the 1-week free trial. Okay, here is episode 710.
Hey there, welcome back to the HOLYPOST podcast. I'm Phil Vischer. I am here with no Sky. No Sky.
No Sky today.
We got no Sky to tie me down, but we do have not 1, but 2 Katelyns.
2 Katelyns.
2 Katelyns. What a world. When you trade out, you lose a Sky and you gain a double dose of Katelyn.
Wow.
Who would want that?
I would love if this was all prepping for just me talking twice as much, because so far it seems like double Katelyn just means I'll just switch between these 2 seats back and forth. I'll impersonate Sky.
Yeah, that's wow, that would be interesting.
That'd be wild.
That would be wild.
It would be sunshine and then sadness.
We're here with Katelyn Chess. You know Katelyn Chess. And you probably know her. She hasn't been here in a while, but she's been on the show quite a few times over the years. Katelyn Beaty. Hi, Katelyn Beaty.
Hi, Phil and other Katelyn. Good to see you, always.
Good to see you. Whenever you're on, this happened at least once before when it was the 2 Katelyns and me, maybe twice.
Yeah, I think a couple times.
But it always confuses me for how to address one of you and not both of you.
We'll figure it out.
At the same time. I'm easily confused.
This will be good for you. 2 women too. Rarely happens on the show.
I know. I don't know. And that's good for me?
I think occasionally 2 women is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, though.
For you, yeah. I think you could use some reining in. Yeah.
Okay. This will rein me in.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. You know Drew Dick? Do you know Drew Dick?
I'm familiar.
Yeah, he posted a story suggestion on Slack.
I know.
That
there are too many boys.
That I'm not even going to do.
Thank you.
Because it's gross.
Thank you.
And I don't do gross.
Good.
So do you not do news of the butt?
I occasionally,
That's a choice.
But I try not to do gross ones, but this was kind of a gross one and I wasn't going to do it because I'm a classy guy. I do classy news of the butt. Classy news.
So do you have like animal news or something?
I do have an animal news if you'd like one. Yeah. But first we have to play the theme song.
What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Sky-filled Katelyn and the HOLYPOST. Sky-filled Katelyn and the HOLYPOST.
And sometimes other people.
HOLYPOST is sponsored by World Relief. As we've talked about immigration policies and the displacement crisis on the show, maybe you've been wondering, what can I do right now to come alongside refugees and immigrants for the long haul? I got good news. Alongside compassionate people like you, our trusted partner World Relief is helping families who've been forced to flee their homes because of war, violence, and persecution, providing food, clean water, medical care, and emergency support for those who've lost everything. And here in the U.S., refugees and immigrant neighbors are receiving housing support, English classes, and job training so they can rebuild their lives. World Relief is making a difference through the support of compassionate people like you. And monthly giving is especially powerful because families need steady support, the kind that shows up when crises hit and stays long after the headlines fade. If you want your generosity to make a real, lasting difference, start your monthly partnership today at worldrelief.org/HOLYPOST. Again, that's worldrelief.org/HOLYPOST. The HOLYPOST is sponsored by BetterHelp. This month we'll celebrate International Women's Day. Women have a day! Who knew? There's an African saying that says women hold up half the sky. And in my house, it's way more than that. My wife Lisa supports me. She supports our kids. She supports our grandkids. She supports our new dog Jax, while I animate and play with puppets. If you're a woman supporting a whole lot, who's supporting you? Lisa and I have both benefited from therapy to resolve conflict, set healthy boundaries, and better equip us to help the people that count on us. BetterHelp will match you with a licensed therapist that can give you the support you need. They're the world's largest online therapy platform with an industry-leading match fulfillment rate. And if you don't like your therapist, you can change at any time. Holding up half the sky is a lot easier when you're being held up too. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/holypost. That's betterhelp.com/holypost. Would you like some animal news?
Sure.
This is important, and I think both of you could apply this to your personal lives because you're both on social media. You both take selfies. You both like to...
I was going to say, when have you seen a selfie?
You both like to... I'm making stuff up. Just let me go.
Okay.
Millennial stereotyping.
Let me set up my story better.
Okay.
You both love to see celebrities or interesting things and run up to them and take a selfie with them.
Wow, okay.
I think I've described you both to a T.
Right.
You should not do that to a snow leopard.
Oh.
Can I just say that?
I wasn't going to, but I'd like to hear more.
Snow leopard mauls skier who approached it for a selfie.
Mauls as in killed?
No, did not kill. Just chewed on a little bit. Just chewed on a little bit. A woman skiing in... I don't know how to pronounce this province of China, was rushed to the hospital on the night of January 23rd after a snow leopard attacked her. While she's now in stable condition, there are photos and video of the attack from other skiers that serve as a grim reminder to admire wildlife from a distance.
Whoa.
If you see a snow leopard or a bear or a buffalo, why do so many of us have the instinct? She got within 3 meters of the snow leopard to try to get her
honestly,
selfie.
I feel like the most shocking thing about this story is that it was a woman. Because I do feel like I hear this all the time and I go, I would never get close to that wild animal. I've heard, usually a man.
I've heard stories of women getting too close to buffaloes. Because you look at everything, well, not you, because you're sensible. You're very smart.
Yeah.
But you could look at things like, oh, it's so cute. Oh, look at the cute buffalo.
Yeah. A lot of animals are bigger than you think.
They are bigger than you think. And they're not as friendly as you've been led to believe by movies.
The cartoons.
If you watch a lot of Disney movies, you're pretty sure that every animal wants to hug you.
Yeah, they're not so cuddly.
Or sing you a song.
Mm-mm.
And in reality, that's not accurate.
Mm.
Kaitlyn, other Kaitlyn, have you ever had a run-in with a wild animal that frightened you? That could have gone bad?
Well, how much time do you have? I don't know.
Have you ever been attacked by a squirrel?
I've never been attacked by a squirrel. I have been attacked by birds before.
Whoa.
So I'm a bird watcher. So in the spring, I love going out and, looking for migratory birds.
Sure.
But one thing you learn quickly is not to get close to an area where birds are breeding or have their nests because certain species become very protective. Understandably, it's their instinct to protect their young. And so I have been dive bombed by birds.
Oh, interesting.
A few times.
Did you hear about the guy who trained harassed crows in his neighborhood while wearing a MAGA hat to train the crows to attack anyone with a MAGA hat?
Goodness
I don't condone that.
Word. No,
I don't think we should do that.
I don't think I'm happy to go on record.
Yeah.
Saying just put this in
it's an interesting idea, but
it's
I
headline
don't
news.
Condone it.
We should not train animals to attack people based on their ideological views.
Yeah, hot take.
Although neo-Nazis, maybe? Neo-Nazis? Like,
crows
pecking them in their skin heads?
It's more the instrumentalization of God's creatures, even more than the harm of the human. Like, the harm of the human concerns me, but it's also the method.
So you're worried about the crow.
The crow didn't ask for that.
And any emotional damage that would be done when the crow wakes up to realize he's been enlisted in a partisan battle. Okay. I hear you.
Wait, Phil, have you ever been attacked by a wild animal?
No, I don't think so. But I have lived a long and colorful life with many adventures in far-off countries.
Oh, wow.
That's not true. No. Although I do have a scratch.
I was going to say, you were attacked recently.
I have a scratch on my arm from my dog. So there
Grizzly.
You go. Okay, we have to, the little kitty light would be blinking if it was working, but it's not working, so it's not blinking. So, but I sense it now.
Yeah.
I've internalized.
That's good.
I've internalized.
Like the crows, he's trained you.
The little kitty light, so that I sense it when Mike wants it to be blinking to tell me to move to the next story. And it's a great story. We're at war. Did you hear about this?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
I
did hear about it.
Over the weekend. It's Monday. We seem to be, did you think that this was a foregone conclusion that we were going to attack Iran?
Trump had said it.
Yeah, but
it didn't seem like the kind
posturing.
He's not a man of his word, but it did seem in the direction of the kind of thing he would do.
Like it was something that he wanted to happen.
Yeah.
There had been reports for the last several weeks about this military buildup.
Yes.
And it also seems to be the case, and I'm not a foreign policy expert, but the Trump administration in its second term is really focused on things happening abroad, much to the chagrin of a lot of Trump's base, because part of the platform for both of his administrations has been kind of America first. Why are we spending all of these resources?
No foreign entanglements. It's not in our interest to have.
This is a foreign entanglement of a large magnitude.
Yeah.
And I think whether you think, the attack was well reasoned or not, it seems like we don't quite know. Even the Trump administration doesn't know what the fallout will be, or is not prepared to address the fallout on a more ground level in Iran.
There are a lot of expat Iranians in the U.S. that are celebrating because guy is a bad guy, and he's the reason sometimes their parents had to flee the country and travel around the world and start new lives. So there's a lot of people celebrating, and so you have mixed feelings. It's good that he's not there anymore, and there's a chance and look how happy these people are, so maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, how often is this the business we're in of it just we did it in Venezuela less dramatically, but I remember when we took out Maduro in Venezuela. That's the guy's name, right? Maduro, I think so. That other Kaitlyn, you think is Maduro?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And it wasn't, and I just tweeted regime change is back on the menu, I guess. But they're saying this isn't regime change. But they're also saying, hey, Iranians, rise up and change your regime.
Right.
Yourself. And I don't really know how to think about it. And we still haven't heard a compelling rationale for why it needed to happen, other than some that were blatantly false, like one member of the administration saying they were 2 weeks away from enough nuclear material, which was that they're not, or that they were close to an ICBM that could hit the U.S., which they're not. The best we know, they're years away from all that. So I don't know. And a lot of people on the right are feeling very ambivalent.
Yeah.
I thought we were against this, but I don't want to be against our guy. So maybe I'm for this.
Yeah. I mean, particularly the vice president is now facing a lot of gotcha screenshots from, he wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in 2023 saying basically no more foreign wars. So I think it shows the lengths to which Trump's loyalist supporters and members of his administration will go to support and justify things that they are previously on record as not supporting or justifying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also the very, I don't know if we want to, we're talking about war in Iran. If we want to get even darker or as dark, we can talk about, is this a distraction from the Epstein files?
Yeah, my wife asked me that.
Which may be an excuse for a long time because it's going to take quite a while for journalists to continue picking through the 3.5 million documents that were released a couple weeks ago. But I think the Trump administration can expect some people to kind of look askance at big consequential decisions like this and say, is this supposed to distract from something else?
Right. I don't know what to do with that. Do you just ignore that, or do you take it seriously, or how do you, I don't know. How do you assign motive? When they started bombing boats in the Caribbean, it was reportedly because internally they decided they wanted to take action and it needed to be kinetic, meaning it needed to blow things up.
Yeah.
That was it, not diplomatic, blow things up action. And it seems like the people in the administration really like, those shows of force. There's a kind of focus on the optics of something, how something looks, how big and impressive and loud something looks. Yeah, the optics of seeing your cabinet members bench pressing rather than reading books on.
And that's an image I'll never be able to get out of my mind.
Yeah. This is like a very exaggerated version of something we've talked about a million times, which is there was so much rationale in every election that Trump has been a part of to say, well, we just need to get things done. The character of the person who gets it done doesn't really matter, or their methods or their temperament or their posturing doesn't really matter as long as they're for our goals.
Right.
This is a great example of things that we said in the lead up to all of those elections, which was you have no idea what kinds of catastrophes or risks or dangers will end up being central to a presidency if you don't put someone in there that has the kind of character where you're not at least constantly I mean, every presidency has the issue of, is this distracting from something else or another? But when you put someone in office who is that, fickle and unprincipled, you're going to end up in a situation where you both don't know what they will do for what reasons, and you're not at all wrong for assuming some of the worst motivations for those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In reaction to that, there was there was a mass shooting in Austin the day before yesterday. A 53-year-old Senegalese immigrant wearing a Property of Allah shirt shot up a bar popular with University of Texas college students. 2 people were killed, and also the shooter, who was 53, been in the U.S. for 20 years, was a naturalized citizen, had no criminal record. But immediately, of course, people, every time there's a mass shooting, we try to figure out how can we work this to our advantage?
Yeah, we fit it into our preconceived political ideas.
Chip Roy, Texas representative, immediately called on Congress to pass legislation that he wrote that would halt nearly all legal immigration. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, called for no more Islamic immigration. Senator Cornyn of Texas said radical Islam has no place in Texas and our country. Governor Greg Abbott didn't call for a blanket ban on immigration, but he urged an end to the current open immigration policies. Now, again, this is someone who had been here for 20 years, came legally, and naturalized as a citizen. Democrats in Texas, of course, called for more gun control laws. Past efforts have failed, with Republican leaders instead loosening firearm regulations. Oh, you want more gun control laws? We'll give you less gun control laws. Ha ha. See if you make that mistake again. There's been so much, and you know, I'm on Twitter somewhat. I didn't know if you knew that
I was aware.
about me, but there's just an immediate blaming of Islam overall, the entire religion, all that there should be no Muslims in the U.S., you know, particularly Texas, which I guess has a growing Muslim population, and locals successfully voted to block the construction of a new mosque. They didn't want it, so you can't build it here. Kaitlyn, other Kaitlyn?
Yeah.
Do you follow this at all? Just the kind of the moods against various out groups, and which one?
I
which
have been
one
known
should
to
we
follow moods? Yes.
Which one should we demonize today?
It has really become axiomatic, unfortunately, just given the high rate of mass shootings in the US. It has become axiomatic that anytime there is a mass shooting, there's an immediate attempt to discover the person's motives, but also discover their identity. In this case, you know, the shooter was kind of explicitly stating their motives, I think, from their clothing. But in other cases, we don't have a clear motive, or the person doesn't fit into neat ideological categories, or they're not necessarily, don't seem to be ideologically motivated.
Yeah.
I do have to kind of do some self-reflection regarding that impulse, because I remember in 2018, there was a shooting in Texas where the shooter had been found to espouse all sorts of kind of Trumpy, MAGA-fueled hate toward immigrants, had posted things on the internet.
Yeah, the El Paso shooting at the Walmart.
And yes.
Yeah.
And immediately I, took to social media and drew a link between our current president's rhetoric toward immigrants and this person's actions. And I don't always know if it's that. And I got a lot of pushback from Trump supporters saying, like, how dare you blame the president for these actions? So I don't always know what meaningful connection we can or should draw between someone's beliefs and someone's actions.
Yeah.
I will say for Texas Republican leaders to call for a ban on Islamic immigration or immigration from Islamic countries is this in tension with their pretty strong commitment to gun rights and gun ownership. Yeah.
Kaitlyn, do you... Sky's actually studied world religions more than I have.
Me too. It's a bummer that he's not here.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Thanks, Sky.
Funny. Yeah.
Nice week.
He's on a plane with his wife somewhere.
He's at he's vacationing.
It's his anniversary. He went somewhere warm.
Yeah. Kuwait, I think.
So
probably a mistake.
It's funny reading this and hearing y'all talk about it right now. It's making me think. Noah and I have been watching The West Wing. He's never seen it, and I have watched it a bajillion times. And we just got to the first episode.
I've never seen it either.
You've never seen it either?
No.
Kaitlyn, surely you have.
I have not seen The West Wing.
It was a TV show. It was just another TV show.
Oh, my word.
You hadn't seen Star Wars till like a minute ago, so
I haven't seen it still.
I really don't want to hear it
anyway,
from you. Yeah, but I hear it's good.
I love The West Wing. The start of the third season, the first episode is so weird until you remember that it was their first episode to come out post 9/11. Because you've got this whole trajectory with like the president, whether he's going to run again. There's all this drama. The season ends in a cliffhanger. And then the first episode is like this very like somewhat didactic, like kind of cringy lesson about religious toleration and terrorism. And then you go, oh, they had to do something. Like they're doing a political show. The thing that I actually found really moving about it that relates to this is they're trying to hold this kind of moderate line. That whole show, you remember how we used to be able to say, like, the right has a point about something and the left has a point about something. Like that whole show in somewhat an overly optimistic kind of sentimental way. That was the critique of the show that's often true. But it is also true that like I appreciate the kind of just sincerity of like, what if we just tried to do good things in politics and we, you know. And in this episode, one of the things they're doing is they're trying to say, like, yes, religious extremism and terrorism are a threat to people's lives and we should take this seriously. Also, don't blame all of Islam and every Muslim person you know for this violence. And they compare it to say that extremism is the same as all of Islam is to say that the KKK is all of Christianity. So they're doing all of that. But one of the things that I thought was really Christian actually about that episode is that when they're pressed on the violence, and in this episode, there's a bunch of college students kind of asking these folks that work in the White House, you know, all of their policy questions about terrorism and Islamic extremism. And one of the things they say is, at the end of the day, all of this evil and violence is nonsense. Like, you can't make it make sense, even with a religious or an ideological doctrine. And that's a profoundly Christian idea that some of this politicking after a mass shooting always seems to forget, is that, to Kaitlyn's point, like, yes, you can find some lines, but you always want to be kind of humble and uncertain about how to bring, you know, the policy or the ideology straight into this kind of violence. But at the end of the day, many Christians throughout history have said on some level, if creation is good and violence is or evil is the corruption of creation or the absence of being, then at its core, evil and violence is nonsense. Like, trying to make sense of it is to give it a dignity that it is not owed. It is always absurd for it to actually happen. And I think there needs to be a dose, especially when politicians are always picking, like, how do I fit this into the preconceived political idea I already had, for Christians to say, we should respond with some analysis. It's not, you know, like, we can't wonder what policies or conditions or cultural things are making this more or less likely. But at the end of the day, there needs to be some amount of throwing our hands up and just going, if you go and shoot people willy-nilly, on some level, don't try to make sense of that. It's impossible.
Yeah. Okay. When Trump says in describing our new war that we're killing wicked men and our cause is righteous. So when
that language has never been misused.
Yeah.
and for Christians, American Christians, that almost, you know, instinctively has a positive, that like makes me feel good about America.
Right.
You know, yeah, our cause is righteous because it's freedom and stuff. It's freedom and not getting shot at by bad guys. Like, the bad guys are always wicked. And
the bad guys are always wicked.
And we're always righteous. We're always the good guys. So other Kaitlyn, how do you react when you hear that?
Skeptically. I mean,
skeptically. Do you think he believes it, or is it language he's adopted from his?
Phil, you're asking me to discern the mind of Trump.
Yes, please.
Well, if I could have successfully done this, I would be a billionaire by now. I would have published that thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, just, you know, comment Trump's brain to get a DM link to my article explaining it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to point out that most U.S. presidents, Democrat, Republican, have used moral, even religiously
evildoers.
Language
when Bush picked up evildoers to describe our enemies in the Middle East, and how much is that idea influenced by our association and affiliation with Israel? Because Israel is obviously the good guys because they're God's chosen people. So it's very easy to make a case that they can't be wicked because they're God's chosen people. And if we know anything from the Old Testament,
I was going to say
the Israelites never did anything wicked.
Yeah, the Bible's got something to say about that.
but that feeds into this Christian narrative that, you know, those are wicked people because they oppose God's people, and we're the friend of God's people. So our cause is righteous. That makes sense, right? That's just logic, Kaitlyn.
Well, I just don't think any U.S. president would. Of course, a U.S. president is going to offer moral rationale for going to war, putting aside like the causes of the of the conflict or the historical context or actions from the US government that has precipitated the conflict that's currently happening overseas in some other country. So I don't think it's a Republican or Democrat. Like, I don't think it's a Republican only thing. I'll say that.
Yeah.
To kind of offer vaguely Christian, certainly moralistic framing to justify going to war.
Yeah,
I think,
that's exactly how
think,
the Iranians talk about us. You know, that it's a holy war against the great Satan. We're the evil one.
I just think, you know.
Is everyone righteous in their own eyes?
I think I've read that somewhere. Like really early on in this long book that I picked up a while ago. It's like one of the first things that the author says. No, I think that language makes me squeamish just because of how easy it is to think that our nation is always doing the right thing and how good it feels for us from an ego perspective, and then how easily manipulated that language can be.
Yeah.
How easy it is to manipulate that language for actually unholy or like at least morally ambivalent or ambiguous purposes.
And it makes it so much easier to dehumanize your enemy when you simply describe them as wicked or evil. First, Kaitlyn, you have any thoughts?
I agree with all of
what we do about that?
I mean, it's to Kaitlyn's point, it's both universal. Like I think of Biden, you know, quoting, "Here I am, Lord, send me," to talk about the US military. Like it's universal across the political spectrum. There's also a not horrible, like human impulse at the heart of it, which is like Sky has said before, no one wants to be, I forget what phrase he used, but like no one wants to be the big bad evil guy. Like everyone wants to believe they're doing the right thing. And if you find yourself in a position where you feel, whether it's because of your loyalty to the president or because of the position you hold in the government, that you have to be in support of something, the way that you, like Kaitlyn said, feel better about doing it is to say, well, this is what's justified under these circumstances. They're the big bad and we're the good guys. And it's easier to see that in very exaggerated circumstances than it is in my own life. But I am prone to do that in all sorts of ways. And it's a lot harder to figure out what it would look like to genuinely have the kind of humility that says it is ambiguous. Like, and even in terms of our participation in the political system, like we've talked about on the show a million times, whoever we are electing, whatever policies we're supporting, there are some that in particular historical moments will just be stark moral choices.
Yeah.
Slavery is wrong. Like the abolitionists who said, I'm not really compromising on that. That was a good thing. But most of our political choices live in this space of ambiguity. And it's really hard to consistently have the posture of, I'm not the unambiguous good guy. My opponents are not the unambiguous bad guys. I'm going to have to try and work with them. I'm going to have to figure out what the best, compromise in this situation is. It's really hard to do that. It's even harder when we're in an administration that has not an ounce of the humility to try and not do that.
What can we do to help the groups that the administration keeps painting as evil or dangerous or garbage or less deserving? We can argue with the administration and we can argue with people on Twitter that are supporting the administration, but
or we could not do that.
Or we could not do that also. But then who would? If not me, Lord, send me.
If someone's wrong on Twitter and no one's there to argue with them, were they really there at all?
Was there an argument? Like our Muslim friends, our Somali American friends, our Latino friends. We have so many groups that are being targeted by the administration, being othered, that they're not us. They're not real Americans. How can we help them? What are your suggestions, other Kaitlyn? How can we help? You've lived in some very diverse areas. What's it like on the ground, and how do you help people know that you're with them?
Okay, I'm solving all division and conflict and misunderstanding.
Prejudice,
that's why we invited you on today.
Well, I don't have I don't have an answer that could be applied to all times and all places, in part because I think the answer is probably contextual and locally rooted.
Man, more nuance.
Unfortunately, I know how fun it is to argue with people on the internet. It can be real fun.
Yeah.
And feel really good, but I am convinced more strongly than ever that I think it only just solidifies people's prejudices. And as you know, Phil, there are some bad actors on the internet who will take any kind of pushback and actually use it to either like sick their supporters on you or anyway, I think this is just an example that came up in church yesterday morning. I live in a really religiously diverse neighborhood in Pittsburgh now. And there was an announcement during the service about a fundraiser that the church is doing to help support local mosques, iftar meals. They are expecting so many more people to come to these meals like at the end of Ramadan than in years past. And so the church was actually teaming up with synagogues in my neighborhood. It's a heavily Jewish neighborhood, to raise money to buy food for all the like predominantly Muslim people who are coming to the mosque to eat. And I just think, that you might think like, oh, great. What is that going to do? It's a one-off thing. But I actually do think that. Yeah,
I think that's what actually does something.
Like helping to feed your neighbor.
Yeah.
Your Muslim neighbor, your
that
Jewish neighbor, your non-Christian
me.
Neighbor. Like it doesn't really like our call to care for people and to reach across aisles is actually not based on whether they agree with us theologically or not.
Right.
Or whether we have different views of God or Jesus or scripture. Like at the end of the day, feeding people who need to eat is what we're called to do. So I thought that was really encouraging. I was moved by that. And I think it probably starts there. I don't think it starts in this disembodied digital space.
Yes.
Oh, that means I'll have to go outside.
Sorry.
Oh, I don't like it. Okay. It will be interesting to see how all of this unfolds in the next couple of weeks and what it means for the fact that our attack on Iran inspired an attack in Austin, which is now inspiring us to be even more anti-immigrant, which is what we were thinking about before the war started, was being anti-immigrant. It's like we have like 3 ruts, and everything we have to throw into one of those ruts because that's what we're about right now. What if we're just going to talk about one more thing to cleanse our palates. Did you hear Hannah Nealman is pregnant with baby number 9?
I like how the way you said that makes it sound like it's your friend, like our mutual friend Hannah.
Yeah.
Just to like round out the podcast,
did you hear about Hannah? She's
some gossip.
Pregnant with her 9th baby.
No, yeah.
Isn't that exciting?
I am not above a trad wife Instagram influencer
deep dive.
I love it, actually. So
yes, tell us who Hannah Nealman is and why I should care.
Kaitlyn probably knows more.
Kaitlyn, tell us who Hannah Nealman is and why I should care.
So Hannah Nealman is the co-owner of Ballerina Farm, which is probably the most...
Is that where they grow ballerinas?
I think it's named that because she studied at Juilliard as a professional ballerina.
She is a ballerina.
Impressive.
She is one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent, trad wife influencers.
And what's
currently.
A trad wife?
Trad wife is a social media influencer whose aesthetic and content promotes a kind of return to traditional womanhood. So a lot of it focuses on domestic life, baking, cooking, caring for someone, for one's family. That's tied to having and raising lots of children. There's kind of a
So what's the difference between trad wife and quiverful? What's the difference between
interesting.
the Duggars and the ballerina?
So not all the trad wife influencers are explicitly religious in their content.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you probably dug, you could find
Duggar.
religious beliefs or affiliation for a lot of these women. But unlike the Quiverful folks, like Hannah Nealman does not post, scripture passages in scripty fonts. It's
Okay.
all like her gorgeous kitchen with
Mhm.
a $3 million stove. Like
Yep.
these people have money. Not all the trad wife folks, but she certainly does.
The ones that are successful at tradwifing. Is tradwifing a way to make money?
It can be.
If you're good at it.
Now, Hannah Nealman is also married to the son of the founder of JetBlue. So, she's doing okay.
Yeah.
That
No
makes
matter what.
That makes it easier to
But-
have. But so she's a Juilliard-trained ballerina. She was crowned Mrs. American 2023 while 20 weeks pregnant with one of her 9 children. Is she the kind of person that women look up to, or that make women jealous? That you can be on your 9th
Is
pregnancy.
there a third option?
Yeah, I feel like that's also like a question for some of these women's therapists' office.
Oh,
not
okay.
for, yeah.
Third option that you are, what is the third option? That she's inspiring because she can do amazing things that you can't?
It was interesting to go look at the pregnancy announcement post on Hannah Nealman's Instagram page.
Yeah, she posted it it was an ad for her company, was her pregnancy.
Protein powder.
Her protein powder.
I actually came here to the podcast to make sure that both of you are getting enough protein.
Oh,
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if we
Okay.
subscribe to your protein powder program, the PPP.
Then you'll get it. Yeah.
Yes. So she announces this in the midst of this ad for Ballerina Farm protein powder packet, the PPP. And some of the comments are like, "How do you have so many babies?" Kind of in this, "Oh my gosh, are you basically out of the Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah.
Like, do you have agency? Are you being forced to do this?"
Right.
Because I think the implication is that any woman who would have 9 kids is probably not choosing to do it.
Mhm.
But I think, and then there are other comments that are like, this is what feminism should be about. It's women getting to do whatever they want. And
Yeah.
why is it that like the scoldy old-timey feminists are shocked when a woman chooses to have 9 children when it should be about choice?
Is she a Rorschach test of your views of feminism and I don't know what else?
Yeah, I certainly think your response to tradwife content kind of it maps neatly onto some pretty strong like ideological camps.
Yeah.
I can't look at tradwife content without thinking about the performative nature of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I think if you just think about all the lighting and camera work that it takes to get a really beautiful shot of a woman making sourdough bread in her kitchen.
Yep.
Like there's none of this is kind of casual or
Right. It wouldn't exist without social media. It wouldn't exist without a platform.
and like highly curated content.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's really significant. I also think most of the tradwife content you can't read apart from a consumeristic framework. Like there is often something being bought and sold here. There's an attempt to turn this content into like a way to make a living, and sometimes like a lot of money.
Yeah. Is it that different than like Back to the Woods folks who have a YouTube channel about how you build a log cabin and set up your own off-the-grid power supply? Is it that different than that?
Like, you mean survivalists?
Yeah, or just off-the-grid folks. Like, you just say goodbye to city life, and we'll show you how to, make your own, raise bees.
There's definitely a kind of through line in a lot of the tradwife content, a kind of assumption that the modern world is not good for us on a human level. Like we're not meant to live at this pace. We're not meant to live in front of screens. What is this doing to our children?
But tune in tomorrow for my next update.
Like and subscribe. There is a sense that like something is off with the modern world. And so if we just kind of return to the trad wife content is always like an attempt to harken back to a time that was supposedly simpler and better.
Does it look more like the 1950s or does it look more like the 1920s?
Well, there's actually both. Like there are so many subgenres within the trad wife world. There's a kind of
it's like romance novels,
almost fetishization of a 50s housewife wearing like cute heels while vacuuming. But then there's also the kind of returning to farming and growing your own food. And isn't that so beautiful to go back to the land? So there's whatever kind of trad wife content you want.
Okay.
You can find it.
What did you just discover?
I was playing around on the Ballerina Farm website because along the lines of what Kaitlyn was saying, I'm so fascinated by this because of the conversation we had a few weeks ago about gender and kind of the right and the left are obsessed with gender. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about the specifics of some of this, but one way that the right and left in different flavors are obsessed with gender is these categories of like, you can be a girl boss or you can be a trad wife. And there's options for men too. Like we've talked weeks and weeks ago about kind of the day in the life or the get ready with me or the weekend habit, routine of a bunch of men on TikTok and that there's never a child or a wife in those videos, but it's like very disciplined and regimented and it's all kind of oriented towards efficiency and like the constitution of your body. And we live in a world that is both obsessed with gender and very confused about it. Few people fully inherit or feel like they want to inherit the ideas that their parents or grandparents had about gender, or they want to go back to their great-grandparents' ideas about gender. But because there's so little inherited local ideas, people feel rootless and they just don't know what to do. And so instead of what I would prefer, which is like we have lots of contextual conversations about what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman in a particular time and place. We want rules. We want structure. Ballerina Farm will offer you that. The dudes on Instagram or TikTok will offer you that. But the thing that just shocked me while I was looking around at the Ballerina Farm website, because there is a promise there of like, you can buy the sourdough kit, you can buy the protein powder, you can buy, and the kind of appeal is, if I don't know what it means to be a woman or I don't know what it means to be a wife, I can go on Ballerina Farm website and I can buy a bunch of this stuff and that can like your start way my
to
life,
meaning.
Including an $85 everyday bowl. It's a single bowl.
Like
it's
a giant?
Single.
Is it like a giant? Could you
it is
make soup
14 inches wide, so that's kind of big. It's apparently best for flour arrangements, salads, fruit, or for making sourdough bread. But it is
always
$85.
Always with the sourdough.
So it's costly to be a traditional farm woman.
Traditional doesn't come cheap.
It doesn't. Not today.
No, poor people have to be modern. They can't be traditional.
Exactly.
They don't have the money. Okay, last question, and this is the one that everyone is dying to know. If I were talking to two women who are both engaged, which one of you is more likely to become a trad wife?
Wait, what does that have to do?
I did not know where you were going. Well, I did think, Kaitlyn.
You're both on a path to be a wife.
I was going to say, if you're confused about how to be a wife, Ballerina Farm will tell us.
Yeah, if you want to be a trad wife, the first step is probably getting engaged. So since you have both done that recently, the next question is, which of you is more likely to end up on YouTube talking about sourdough?
Ooh. I mean, I'd like to think neither of us are headed in that direction.
Okay. I know, but if it
had to be one of us.
If it had to be one of you.
I don't know. How much sourdough bread have you made in your life, Kaitlyn?
I've literally made never.
Never?
Nary a bread loaf.
Okay. How often do you learn to cook something new?
I actually enjoy cooking itself.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm happy to cook dinner for my fiance when he comes over for dinner. I don't have any problem with that. We typically do take turns.
Oh, okay. Not very traddy.
No.
Okay, what about you?
I do cook for Noah a lot more than he cooks for me. But I'm concerned about his health. Like, I'm like, I want us to live long lives. And so I just cook for that reason.
All right. Kaitlyn, too, has to go. She's got other things to do. We appreciate you filling in for Sky.
Anytime.
Oh, there's a lot going on. We'll have to talk about it next week. We'll come back and new things will have happened.
And I'll tell you how this $85 bowl works.
Yeah. Give us you should do an unboxing video.
It's sold out, actually.
Oh, well, of course. They can't make them fast enough. They better charge more to get the demand down a little bit. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Go to HOLYPOST, learn about HOLYPOST Plus. Lots of content there. People are making almost every day that you will enjoy. And take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Public Good Generation, the Center for Christianity and Public Life's Summer Civics Program for high school students who want to connect their Christian faith to public life and leadership. Today's teens are growing up in a world where politics feels chaotic and faith can feel disconnected from public influence. It is important that the next generation views politics as a place for service and loving their neighbor. Public Good Generation gives high school students space to ask big questions and the tools to lead with faith, courage, and conviction. This 1-week immersive program takes place July 6th through 11th, 2026 in Washington, D.C., and is designed for rising juniors, rising seniors, and 2026 high school graduates. Students take part in mock town halls and mentoring sessions with Christian leaders working in government, advocacy, and journalism. Students tour DC's monuments, build friendships with like-minded peers, and reflect on how spiritual formation shapes our politics. And with need-based scholarships available, cost doesn't have to stand in the way. If you know a high school student who's ready to grow in faith and public purpose, send them to www.ccpubliclife.org/holypost and encourage them to apply by Wednesday, April 15th.
Last summer, I tried Poncho shirts for the first time, and I told you how much I love them. They look great, they're comfortable, and they work anywhere, from working outdoors to going out to dinner. But Poncho shirts aren't just for the summer. They've also got a line of flannels and denim shirts that are perfect for the colder seasons too. Here's my beef with most flannels and denim shirts. They just feel too bulky and stiff. You feel like you're in a spacesuit. If you're lucky, the shirts will break in over time, maybe. But that's not the case with Poncho's flannels and denim shirts. They feel different, they're soft and they stretch. They're extremely comfortable and broken in from day one. And just like their summer shirts, they look great for any occasion. And they come with the Poncho Promise, free shipping, free returns, and even exchanges anytime. Poncho stands by every one of their shirts. So go to ponchooutdoors.com/holypost and enter your email for $10 off your first order. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/holypost for $10 off and free shipping. You'll love their shirts, I promise. And thanks to Poncho for sponsoring this episode.
HOLYPOST is sponsored by Our Place. Unless you just pick stuff out of the ground and put it straight into your mouth, eating healthy starts with cooking healthy. Most cookware still contains harmful forever chemicals like Teflon. A single scratch on a non-stick coated pan can release 9,000 particles of plastic into your food and into you and your family. Our Place makes high-performance, toxin-free cookware. You can cook without worrying that the coating on your pan is going to end up in you. Plus, the cookware from Our Place is gorgeous. Great designs, awesome colors. You got to check it out. Our Place has a 4-piece cookware set that can overhaul your entire kitchen. The set includes 2 multifunctional always pans and 2 perfect pots in mini and full sizes that replace a whole stack of cookware. And buying them together saves you $150. So stop cooking with toxic cookware and upgrade to Our Place today. Visit FromOurPlace.com/holypost and use code HOLYPOST for 10% off site-wide. With a 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and returns, you can experience this game-changing cookware with 0 risk. That's FromOurPlace.com/holypost.
Our interview this week is with Carrie McKean, a West Texas-based writer and communications director at First Presbyterian Church in Midland. She recently reported the story of a Venezuelan mother deported without her children and the Trump voting pastor who stepped in to care for them and help get them home. Carrie has spent the last few years writing for outlets such as the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Free Press, and Christianity Today about what it's like to live in a deeply conservative community while resisting the easy categories of both the right and the left. Her work on immigration and vaccine hesitancy challenges the caricatures we build about one another and reminds us that most of our neighbors are far more complicated than our politics allow. Here is Katelyn's interview with Carrie.
Carrie McKean, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. You have written so many things. We could talk about so many different articles that you've written. Before we get into any of that, why don't you just start with, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to write about topics like this. Well, like I said, we're going to cover a lot. And typically, we have a lot of guests on the show who are academics or who are pastors. You are neither one of those, but give us a little background on how did you come to be writing about public health for the New York Times or about immigration for Christianity Today?
Yeah, it's a weird and wild story, and one I still don't know that I can answer completely coherently. But I guess the best way to describe, I've always loved writing since I was a little girl. I had lots of journals. But in 2020, during the pandemic, I had a blog for a lot of years, and I wrote a blog post about how this is a little thing that happened that a lot of people don't even know about, but it was a big deal in my town. And at the beginning of the pandemic, the price of oil, a barrel of oil, went negative. And at the time, that was sort of seen as this, among some on the more progressive left, the Senator AOC, tweeted, don't you love to see it? And I remember, thinking, I instantly, tons of people I knew had gotten laid off and businesses were getting, it was really scary for my community. Probably at that point in time, more scary than the pandemic because this was in April.
Yeah.
Before everything really started getting worse from a health side. And I wrote a blog post that went a little viral locally, and a friend of mine told me, you should turn that into an op-ed and pitch it to a national newspaper. And I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. So she walked me through the process and gave me email addresses to send it to. And she just sort of guided me through the whole thing. And I literally copied and pasted her instructions and worked my way through the process and pitched 10 papers. And within a couple of days, I'd heard back from a couple, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and both of them offered to publish it. And I ultimately went with the New York Times because that was sort of the audience that I more wanted to reach.
Yeah.
And it was, in a way, it was very unique. It was about that particular situation, but in some ways it's kind of emblematic of all the work I've done since then, which has been this person that's, I consider myself to be pretty moderate. But I've always been in Texas, born and raised, other than some brief years living in China, which we could talk about if you wanted. But that other than that, I've always been here, but kind of culturally a little bit not in the mainstream sometimes, a little bit on the edge of that locally, but then nationally probably considered pretty conservative. And I joke. And so that in-between space has always been where I've landed. And I just find people interesting, and I tend to find things that we have in common more interesting than the things that are different about us. And so I guess that's kind of what has happened is I've become, I guess when you write an op-ed at that level for the first time, then it sort of opens doors. I don't mean to be coy, but I just think at that point people will read your emails. And so then it just sort of led one to the next. And that's how I came to be writing about whatever's happening in the moment. And I think for a lot of the more, insofar as I've written for the more progressive, liberal outlets that some people would call them, or the more mainstream outlets, it's been as a voice of somebody that's coming from the right of center, but probably not so extreme that people stop listening. They're kind of curious about it, as opposed to putting up their guard. And so it gives me but honestly, in many ways, I don't understand it myself. If you would have asked if I was going to write about public health for the New York Times, I'd be like, absolutely not. I know nothing about that. So I'm not sure, but that's kind of how it came to be, at least. So. Yeah.
I love that. Carrie, one, I think you sound like a lot of the people listening who I think feel similar. I've heard from many of our listeners who are from Texas or from North Carolina, and they're in my town, I'm the progressive one. But when I'm thinking of myself nationally, they think I'm so conservative and I don't really know exactly where I fit and I'm trying to figure it out. The other thing I love about your answer is you so well just embodied there what I see in your work, which is curiosity about people and just like a willingness to look at what is there without jumping in immediately and saying like, I already have the categories. I know where to put this. I know, but just curiosity. And one of the places that I discovered this first and just really enjoyed it was this New York Times piece you wrote about, the title is, "This is Why My Texas Town Lost Trust in Public Health." And this was March of last year. And I love how you approach a topic that I think maybe even many of the listeners of the Holy Post would jump to a conclusion quickly about. Like they might know someone online or someone in their community that's hesitant about vaccines or is not vaccinating their children. I would do this. I have immediately negative connotations about those people, sometimes quite harsh negative connotations. And you approach it with some historical background and some empathy. I'm going to read really quickly one of the things you said that I think describes this really well. You wrote, "There's a tendency to assume the worst about people who don't trust public health authorities' advice about vaccines. At best, they're dismissed as backward and stupid. At worst, selfish and unempathetic. I feel the pull to dismiss some people as all of these things, such as the pastor in Fort Worth who bragged that his church's school had the lowest measles vaccination rate in Texas. But while smugness might feel good, it doesn't help anyone understand the average vaccine-hesitant person's perspective, and it doesn't solve our collective problem. Eroded trust in our public health institutions harms us all, and in order to get back on track, we need to understand how we got here." So give us some of the context, Carrie, give us an example of what we're talking about here of like how you would describe someone who experiences that eroded trust to the point of not vaccinating their children or themselves. How would you describe this other way of viewing maybe even people that you know in real life who are hesitant about vaccines?
I think that it often becomes like it's just a political trope in some ways. It's like it immediately, well, let me back up a little bit further and say, I didn't set out to write about vaccines. That was actually part of it probably that allowed me to do it with sort of a neutral, a little bit more of a neutral stance or a neutral approach in my own heart, because it wasn't really a topic that I felt like up in arms about. I mean, I would have a harder time being measured in some other topics, but that one, I had a piece that I'd done for the New York Times before, and they came back and they asked me, because the measles outbreak happened pretty close to where I live. And they came and asked me this question about why are people not getting vaccinated for the measles? And I was chewing on that question. I was like, well, I think it's a deeper question. And that's what led me to that. So that's kind of the first thing is and it made me start to ask questions of my friends and neighbors that I hadn't actually talked about. I really have a little bit of a healthy, like if I'm not going to ask you before I let my kid come play at your house whether or not you're vaccinated. I'm just not really, that's not my personality. But that piece forced me to start having that conversation with some folks. And I found myself surprised in some cases of like, oh, this person's not vaccinating, but that they don't look the way I thought an anti-vaxxer looked. I had my mental category of what those kinds of people looked like based on based largely on what I see on Facebook or X or in the media. But then when I started talking to real people in my actual life about it, I realized, wait, there's a lot of people here that have more complicated views about this than I had allowed. And I realized that there's this a lot of times in our national conversations, there's really just two boxes that we can, on any topic. Right. You're for immigration, you're against immigration. You're for vaccines, you're against vaccines. You're for giving your 13-year-old a cell phone, you're a Luddite. Like there's these really extreme, but most of us live in this tension in the middle. And when I started talking to folks about their experiences and taking seriously, like their attempts to best discern what's right for their family and how few of those people were trying to project their own value systems on others. They weren't really saying like, this is what everybody needs to do. They were just saying that I'm doing the best I can here, and this is what we've decided for ourselves. And for one, getting them to talk about it was hard because nobody, I think the people that are willing to talk about it tend to be the ones that are looking to build platforms, whether that's of being an influencer or an outrage, whatever you call an outrage influencer. Either way, they like the attention. A lot of folks are just kind of quiet about it. And so if you could get them to talk about it, you begin to sense like this is something they've spent a lot of time thinking about. And a lot of time, even if I disagree with where they landed, they weren't just flippant about their decisions. And I think, yeah, it comes back to that curiosity, which I briefly mentioned a second ago that I lived in China for 4 years. And that's really, in a weird way, that was such a formational time in my life because we didn't understand anything about what we were getting myself into. Like my husband and I, we went literally knowing like one word in Chinese. And this was before you had translate apps on cell phones and all that. And so we were learning everything afresh, like how to get our groceries, how to get clean water to drink. We had to have people help us with, I mean, they even eat, did you know that they even eat bananas from the opposite end that you and I would
I
typically
did not know that.
Yeah. Like most of my Chinese friends, like if you picked up a banana, I bet you start at the top where it's hooked to the tree.
Yeah.
They peel it from the other end.
Interesting. I guess they keep the handle that way. That's kind of smart.
Like, I mean, maybe that's not all of China, but the people I was around. And I remember thinking initially, like my first feeling was, you're doing that wrong. My second thought was, well, that's interesting. I wonder why they're doing it that way. And that whole shift that happened for me over 4 years of constantly having to react to my own internal, you're doing it wrong, created a little bit more curiosity in me, I think. And so even in situations like that vaccine piece, I began to realize there's a lot more that goes into people's perspectives here. And there's a lot more history of pain and sickness and fears and people they know that suffered in some way. I mean, there's a lot more in that decision-making matrix than, whether or not they agree with your politics.
I so appreciate that. And everything you've been describing in terms of the, like, if I know one thing about a person, I know everything, in terms of the, like, if it's not one extreme, it's the other, applies as well to our conversation around immigration. And we've covered for weeks now at the Holy-Post, we've done many episodes where we've talked about some of the really heartbreaking things that are happening right now with the Trump administration, with ICE, with American citizens who have been killed, with immigrants of various kinds that have been, staying in their homes and afraid. And I think one of the challenges of addressing the actual policy piece of this, like how do we make a better immigration system, is there has been such great wrongdoing. And it does tempt us to think anyone who disagrees with me about immigration policy writ large is one of those bad people in this bad box that I've created. And again, one of my favorite pieces that you have written in 2025, you wrote a Christianity Today piece called Immigration's Complicated Costs for My Town and My Soul. And you start out describing what it's like to be in a place where there is a much higher percentage of immigration compared to some of the other places in the country where people might have ideas about immigration but are not experiencing it so intimately. And I appreciated similarly how that piece was trying to, at least in my mind, trying to describe how people could come to differing positions on this, not from a place of being evil or stupid, but from a place of grappling with their community changing. And then sometimes having political leaders, capture their affections and mobilize those very fine motivations towards wrong ends. But give us a little bit of how you would describe how you have experienced people having this opposition to immigration that might be different than people listening expect. I think a lot of people listen to the podcast go, if you have opposition to what they might consider fair, more just immigration policies, or if you in general want there to be less immigrants in the US or less immigration into the US, I think most people listening would go, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. That's just evil. Give us some more sense of, like, complexify for us or humanize for us some of the other perspectives that you have encountered and have written about.
I love immigration writing. I love immigrant stories. My whole life I've spent, like since I was in college, have spent enmeshed in either refugee work, was it kind of an immigrant myself for a while, living in China, or at least experienced what a foreigner's life would be. I have a daughter that's internationally adopted, so she's an immigrant. I have a dear adopted daughter was a refugee, that she's not officially adopted, but like I have all these people I love that are part of my life, that's part of their story. And so I think one of the main things I would say about immigration is that very few people understand it, including the people that have the loudest opinions. My favorite thing to get angry at is when people say, well, they should just come here legally. Okay, tell me about that. Tell me what you think the process is for how to come here legally, because I can assure you it is not what you think. It is so broken. It's so convoluted. There is not a clear pathway for anybody. I mean, depending on which, whether you're from Mexico or Canada, you qualify for vastly different visas. And there's all these loopholes, and just, it doesn't make any sense. There's not a coherent immigration policy. And Russell Moore wrote about Jeffrey Epstein and the culture wars. And there's this one line he says in there, maybe one reason is that Jeffrey Epstein figured out the deep, dark secret of this moment. The people who fight culture wars often believe what they say, but the people who lead culture wars often don't. And I probably would make a strong case that the people who fight for just immigration often believe what they say, but the people who are leading the two political parties saying that they want to fix immigration, they actually are both benefiting from the fact that it is remains in chaos and remains broken. And so that's the first thing, is that everything is more complicated than you think. And there's no pat answer. I would believe that there needs to be more strict border laws, because that's actually more just. Because what we've done instead through the past several years is allowing lots and lots of people into the country, but not giving them legal permit to be here, and not giving them the protections of law to stay. And as a result, they are this almost indentured servant class that is abused and misused and basically exists one step above human trafficking, plus all the ones that actually end up in human trafficking. So, the challenge I would give to my more progressive friends that just sort of want to say love is the answer is that this isn't love. This is cruelty in a different form. And then on the more conservative side, when somebody says something like, well, they should come here legally, or we need to protect American jobs, I'm like, well, who do I know that's signing up to roof houses right now? And are you wanting to go to the meatpacking plant and butcher the cattle that you hope to have at a decent price in the grocery store? Because I feel like all of our hands are dirty in this. Like, we all, whether we mean to or not, we are all complicit in a system that's taking advantage of people and their vulnerability, in their human need. We are taking advantage of them and reaping the benefits of their labor. And there's and both ends of the political spectrum like to point to the other side and say that they're the ones doing it. But the truth is, here we are, and nobody's actually working very hard to fix it. There's a bill right now before Congress, the Dignity Act, which is a bipartisan immigration bill sponsored by a woman in Florida. And it would probably do some of the most, it would make both parties a little happy and both parties a little angry, but it would actually do the most of anything in the last couple decades to fix immigration. And the last I checked, there's only like 36 Congress people. There's 18 Democrats, 18 Republicans. And the last time I looked at it, which was just last week, that have co-signed it. And so that's like, we talk a lot about wanting to fix this, but nobody does. And so as soon as one person on either the left or the right says, well, it's the problem with the people over there on the other side, I'm like, actually, your side's not doing anything to fix this either. And so that's kind of where I land. But I think there's some really I love telling complicated immigration stories that break up this nonsense that one side is the problem. So.
You wrote recently a piece for the Free Press that I think it's a great example of a complicated immigration story. So tell us a little bit about, this piece was titled "The Mother Deported Without Her Kids," and the heading under it was, I'm going to say her name wrong. How should I say her name?
Mari B is the way I've always said
Mari
it.
B. When Mari B. Bileno was sent back to Venezuela, she was desperate to bring her kids. Instead, they were left behind and ended up in the care of a Trump voting pastor with a plan to get them home. Which, like, I don't know anyone who's like scrolling and sees that and is not like, oh, interested in that. So tell us that story.
Well, it's crazy. And I will say that one thing I think has happened uniquely, I put fault at both administrations, or really beyond that, like go back more 10 years, 20 years for the chaos of where we are now. But I will say that there seems to be more chaos at this moment
Yeah.
than I've seen in the past, where we've just got to deport people and we're not, if we chop a hand off or chop a leg off in the process, oopsies, we're moving on. And that seems to be happening. There's a lot of evidence of that. So that is what I find most alarming about this. Because yes, according to the mother in the story that we interviewed and others, I will say, I know of at least 10 other children myself right now in the United States who are minors, who are here in the US, whose parents and legal guardians have been deported without them. They do not have legal guardians in the United States. And as far as the federal government has released information to us, the federal government does not know where these children are. They are being passed between friends and family, and in the case of some of the ones I know, strangers. But the difference between them ending up in the house of a safe stranger and a unsafe stranger is just happenstance or miracle or whatever, someone wants to call that. So that to me is unacceptable. Like, we can have strong border policy and even deport people without traumatizing children. And I won't say that. That's probably not fit for public sake, but the issue in this case is not that she was deported. She shoplifted. She broke some laws. I have zero issues with her being deported, to be honest with you. The issue is that she was deported without her children in defiance of what the federal government's own policies say that they would do in these kinds of cases. They will not produce evidence that they followed their own policies. And so the children are left in this vulnerable situation. And in this case, it was literally, she's in Venezuela, not sure what to do. The people that had her kids aren't going to be able to keep them much longer. They weren't ever intending to keep them permanently anyway. And so she calls a friend who calls this pastor who lives in Midland and says, hey, can you go get these kids? And he drives to Dallas and picks them up and brings them back.
Wow.
And then takes care of them for several weeks while he's trying to figure out how to get them back. And we have to read the story to find the whole and happy ending, but he succeeded in that batch of kids. Now there's more that we're still not sure because policies have changed since then. We're still trying to figure out how to get some of them home. But the reality of how broken that is, I'm like, we should all be able to agree. This is not about whether or not you think it's good to be, deporting people or not. This is about protecting children. And if we can't agree on that, like, we've really lost the plot.
Right.
So I forget what you asked me, but that's the story. A little bit.
Talk a little bit about, because I think part of what complicates this story, if you're scrolling on social media and you see this, is that the heading includes ended up in the care of a Trump voting pastor. Like, if you're scrolling, you might be going, along the lines of what we've been saying, there are good guys and bad guys to a lot of people. And the good guys are, anti-deporting people, especially anti-deporting people separately than their children. And those are the good guys, and the bad guys voted for Trump and support everything Trump does. And the world is neatly divided into those two categories. You could flip it from the other political perspective, right?
Yeah.
But there are good guys and there are bad guys. And a story like this kind of complicates that idea of the world. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think I wrote a little more about that particular angle, I think, in the follow-up piece I did for CT, where I actually think that's where this is what the church should be offering this cultural moment.
Yeah.
And that we're not in too many cases. And that is that we should be set apart from the culture. We should be a little bit unable to be politically categorized. And as my friend, the pastor who's the center of the story, is very, very conservative politically, more conservative than me politically, for sure. And some of the things he agrees with and votes for and believes in, I personally don't think I find them to be a little extreme in some cases. However, his politics are not what he's thinking about in that moment. In that moment, he's thinking about, what does Jesus say to do? And he has this line, because his work with migrants started before this, with a migrant shelter he opened up in Mexico. And his story of how God changed his heart and got him involved in that work was pretty profound. But it really involves this very clear call he heard from the Lord of, don't ask me why they're here. Ask me, or how they got here. Ask me, what am I supposed to do now that they're here? And that to him is separate from, I support as a president that's going to have strict border laws and deport people who aren't here legally. And, he holds those political positions. And he says, I am supposed to care for the vulnerable in my midst. Those two things are not incompatible. The world wants them to be incompatible. The church can say they're actually not incompatible. And if the church can't get back to allowing more people to hold those two truths at the same time, we're really kind of in a mess, because that's the complexity that the moment demands. Like, to be able to say, I fundamentally don't have an issue with following the laws and the laws of the land, and she should, if she's shoplifted, she should be deported. Okay, that can be true, and we should be sure that her children are protected and cared for. And that's as simple as it was. Like, he's like, this isn't that complicated. That's what God calls me to do, and that's what led him to do a lot of his other migrant work as well, without ever really compromising his own personal political stance. In fact, probably a lot of the migrants he works with know that. Like, he's probably pretty open with them about, actually, I think this is not I think it's a broken system. He also, though, learned that, another common thing that people will say is, well, they shouldn't have come illegally. They didn't come illegally. Many of these folks came through and requested asylum. Is the asylum process broken? Absolutely.
Yeah.
This should not be an open gate back door. Like, that needs to be reformed. But they came. I mean, they have a work permit in some cases. That means the government knows they're here. They're not illegal in the way that people think of that. And so in his own journey of getting closer to migrants, his own perspective on his political stances got more jumbled up, and he began to be more aware of the complexity himself, which then sort of softens. I mean, I think that's why Jesus tells us to draw near to people, because the closer you get to people, the less you're able to have these absurd reductive stereotypes and think they hold any water.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. I spend a lot of my professional life, talking to people about what their faith means for their political life. And I often tell people, on one hand, I want you to think really well about how Scripture describes how human communities should best function, what you think God demands of us, and then ask, how does that shape how I vote and the policies I should support? But I often also tell people, I'm less interested. I'm personally, because of my work, I'm interested in changing your mind maybe about some political questions. But I often tell people I'm less interested in that than I am in you being a faithful Christian, even if you still hold to the same political positions that I might disagree with, that you hold to. If you are confronted with, along the lines of this pastor, if you are confronted with opportunities to serve the actual people in your neighborhood, do you start with the political box and have that determine if you can serve them or not? Or do you go to what Scripture says? I care more about that, about you being the kind of person that can respond and serve them, than I do about changing your politics so you vote a different way, even though I do care about that. And one of those is much more important than the other. Somehow we are almost out of time, Carrie. One more question I want to ask you. You mentioned a moment ago, you wrote this piece for the Free Press, then you wrote a CT piece about the same story. And in it, you have this description of how Christians can respond to this political moment we're in, this moment where, if I know how you voted, I know everything about you. When I know the box to put you in, when my party tells me not just how to vote, but how to treat the people in my neighborhood or how to respond when people are in need. And you give some description of what a different Christian approach would be. I'd love to hear from you for just a minute about how you think the church can be more faithful in this moment. Where are we missing opportunities to, as you just described, have a distinctive witness that doesn't fit in the boxes that people have for us, especially politically?
I think the main takeaway I've had just over the last few years as I pay more attention to these stories that I see of people doing it well, has been a refusal to look at people abstractly. It is a people are not issues. People are people. And so that doesn't mean, I think so often the folks that say that often follow it up with some sort of bleeding heart liberal, stuff. And as a result, it shuts people down from listening. That doesn't mean that. It doesn't have to mean that. And I think that's where we need to get more faithful with taking care of the people right in front of us. And that starts with our actual neighbors and the people around us. And unfortunately, we all live in these bubbles of, increasingly politicized neighborhoods where everybody's like-minded. But I think if we pray that God help me be a person who restores the streets of dwelling here, then we would find that he brings to our attention people that are complicated and messy and difficult, but that when we actually see them with our own eyes and we begin to encounter their stories, we realize, oh, this is not what I'm hearing the pundit on Fox News or on CNN say about this. This is so much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And also would I have done the same thing? Like, would I be in the same situation if the cards had been dealt a different way, and would I have made the same choices? And I just think it's much harder to not be engaged with real human suffering when you are sitting across the table from someone. It's very easy. So I suppose my main charge to people would be to sign off the internet and to go touch some grass.
Amen.
And to ask God to bring you an actual living neighbor to love. And if it's somebody that doesn't vote like you, or doesn't think like you, or doesn't look like you, or doesn't talk like you, all the better. Like those are the kinds of relationships we really need to have. And that doesn't mean you have to compromise your values or suddenly shift to some other drastic position on something. It probably just starts with listening and letting them talk and finding out more about their perspective. And it's not world changing, but I think it's the only way we can change things. So
yeah. Thank you so much, Carrie, for your really thoughtful writing and work, and for taking the time to spend with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, everybody, like and subscribe so we can make more videos like this and more people can find them.